Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. Today, we are joined by Claudio. Claudio, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. Perhaps you can tell me a little bit about yourself. And once again, thanks for joining us on Justice and Pieces.
Well, thank you so much, John Paul. It's my privilege to be here. Very honored to be invited to be a part of your podcast and your program altogether. To tell you a little bit about myself, so I'm a Brazilian trained lawyer. That's where I did my legal education. I also did a master's in development. And basically, throughout this process, I got the opportunity to do a few summer and winter school in different countries, including the US, South Africa, and Azerbaijan. I got the opportunity to meet a lot of lawyers from other countries. And when it came time basically for me to finish my dissertation on my master's, I got the opportunity to come to Toronto to Osgoode Hall Law School and to research a little more about the regulation of sanitation. That's specifically what I was studying in development. Um, a lot of things have ended up happening in my personal life where I decided to come back to Toronto afterwards, and then I came with the intention to become a practicing licensed lawyer here. So I came back, did the GPLLM, which I have just completed, the Global Professional Masters of Law at the University of Toronto. And during that program, I got the opportunity to do a few different things at the university. I got the chance to interview 75 lawyers as part of a program to celebrate the university's, specifically the Faculty of Law's 75th birthday or anniversary. And with this context also, I've been hosting a podcast since 2021, called Studying Law Around the World. And in this podcast, basically, I interview people asking, how do you become licensed in your jurisdiction, if that's the topic, or, asking lawyers, how do you manage your practice and what are things that you wish you would have known as an early career lawyer. So this is a little bit about myself.
Perfect. So thank you, Claudia, for all that. And I think before we get into all the other people you've looked at, you shared there certainly a variety of different places you've studied law, whether for a summer or winter semester, whether for your your GPLLM. So maybe can you tell us a little bit about those different experiences, and what are the things that you liked, and in particular Azerbaijan. I don't think too many people that are listening to this may have been there. So what can you share from those different experiences?
Yeah, for sure. So, first of all, I think that one of the very interesting things of studying law abroad is that when you first start learning about this wonderful subject that the law is you learn like how it was so organized in different ways, right? So we hear about common law and civil law and all of that, but the more I went around the world in a way, the more I noticed that these systems are converging more and more nowadays. So a lot of the codified systems have a lot of precedent. A lot of the precedent based systems have more and more codified regulations and so forth. So that's definitely one of the things I observed as I went around the world. And another point that I think is really important is that the profession is made of people. And even though there's a lot of different things in culture wise about how do you conduct business in a different country, how do professionals of a certain profession are expected to show themselves in different settings, it's very much a profession where people are usually open to dialogue, where people are usually open to share experiences. And I think that was a real highlight. Speaking specifically about the different places I went to, the interesting thing is that everywhere I went, classrooms looked the same. The way lectures are giving, there's just a little bit of a difference here in North America, where you have very specific the Socratic method, and people are kind of expected to be ready to be called on. But really, the overall system looks very similar, in my opinion. The difference is that if you're in South Africa, I got the chance to do it in Cape Town. I got the chance, to climb Table Mountain and see, lots of the scene and the wildlife, and kind of the breaks, we would go and do different things. So I feel like the highlight of doing an exchange experience is also getting to see a little bit of the environment you're at. In Azerbaijan, on the other hand, we got the chance to visit. Kind of they have a very interesting, rich history and a very interesting sense of multiculturalism. So we got the chance to visit all these different religious denominations that they have going on. At the same time, we got the chance also to be, in the capital, and then just travel a couple of hours and see mountains with snow. So it was just very interesting to see all aspects of it. The from the classroom to going out in the streets and seeing what life looked like in those areas.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely fascinating, and it's really enriching, right? To kind of get those different perspectives. I mean, again, as you said, the classroom kind of environment stays the same. How about I guess in terms of learning about the different types of law, right? As you know, you were going into in some places you have civil or common law, but what I mean, what in particular may have stood out in terms of comparing it with what you learned in Brazil, right? Versus, any particular things that you could say, hey, we should try this in Brazil. Or I mean, now, I mean, especially because you're going to become licensed in Ontario, even more so of how that all kind of connects with what we learned in Canada and Ontario law. But anything like that you found really different than what you studied in Brazil, and how did that help better sort of understand how things work?
Yeah, I do believe there's a few things that come to mind as we talk about that. Um, I continue that topic of how much things are very similar. So most of the law very much follows the same principles, a lot of the same patterns, and even the same way to reason. But there's a few things that definitely come to mind. The dignity of small claims court, and how most countries just really benefit from having something like that, in the aspect of having access to justice and having the opportunity to plead a case, even if the monetary value of that case is not grand. Um, but it does make a difference in a lot of people's lives. So that was very interesting to see different systems that either had it or didn't have it at all. It was also interesting to see that while the constitutional text has been very interesting in different countries, I've also noticed that judicial independence is such an important topic. So even when you have very much uh, ideological, interesting points of view, um, and you have a constitution that assures lots of specific rights and is very idyllic in the way it puts them. Really, those people who get to choose what happens with the constitutional text once it's supposed to be applied in people's lives, they have a lot to say, and that they can do a lot. So it's been interesting to see that too, to see the limits that um, can be put in place or not in different places, and to see really this experiment that we're living through of institutions and democracy and the judiciary in its role. So it's definitely been interesting to take place as both an observer and very much a part of this ongoing system in the world.
Now that certainly goes hand in hand with your first podcast. They're studying law around the world. So can you maybe tell me how going around the world yourself and meeting all these lawyers, what kind of led to you starting that podcast, and tell us a little bit more about it.
Absolutely. So a lot of it was my personal curiosity, and a lot of it was also seeing that I got the chance to meet with some really interesting people who had really interesting stories. I was personally concerned I would forget about them, or I'd forget their stories. But not only that, I wanted to make sure that I could share them with other people. It almost felt selfish to keep them just to myself. So those were definitely big motivators. Beyond that, that was something that I had a lot of friends doing what we call the COVID project. So everybody was at home. We had, in a way, out of nowhere, we kind of got a little bit of extra time in our hands. We saw ourselves not being able to go out or do anything else. So I put all of those ideas together and decided to start the podcast. It started up very much with me interviewing people and asking them, how do you become licensed in your country? And how does the bar exam work? And all of these very basic questions. But it was so interesting to see that, some countries don't have a bar exam. Some countries have an oral bar exam. So it was just very much very far ends of the spectrum on that sense. And it started with that idea, but then I just realized more and more that the profession also had a lot of unspoken rules, and it had a lot of things that people did in their careers that really helped them to be successful, be it in networking, or be it in the way they made an online brand for themselves. So I just started noticing different things and started asking them about it. In the other hand as well, I noticed that a few lawyers that I spoke to, they mentioned to me how busy they were and how they wouldn't be able to you know uh, answer to all the students that would ask them questions. And basically I brought the idea back and said, hey, I totally understand it's hard for you to have a coffee chat with all these people. How about you come record a podcast with me, and next time somebody asks, you just send them the link, and then everybody feels good about it. So I also try to offer it as a good solution and a helpful resource.
Yeah, so I mean, kind of the same in the kind of the same lens as we were talking about with you personally. I mean, what are some of the similarities and differences? I think you said you're on to episode 79 or maybe 80 by the time this is shared. What have you noticed from around the world? Some of the unique things and some of the things that are in common with all the different lawyers you've spoken to.
Yeah, one of the things that definitely stands out is that lawyers will often say how much keeping an open mind makes a difference in the profession, and a lot of these lawyers that I spoke with represent that in a different way, right? So some of them basically got into law school because they kept an open mind. Some of them started a very specific kind of line of work, going into a big law firm, staying there until they made partner, and kind of continuing on. But then something happened, and they felt like they had an open mind to try something else, right? And then they went into entrepreneurship, or even they stayed in that path, and then they kept an open mind, and they thought that they could contribute to their community by being in different boards and launching a book and doing XYZ things. So I feel like definitely keeping an open mind is something that I hear a lot, and I find it very fascinating to see how it actually plays out a role in different people's lives. So that's been definitely one of the highlights. Another highlight that I have seen more and more, especially in this after COVID, I've been hearing more and more from lawyers saying, pick up the phone, call people, talk to people, because sometimes it makes it just the email communication and all of that. It's amazing for keeping record, keeping track, but sometimes things can be solved so much easier if you give somebody a call. And I don't know if this was just a pandemic thing, or it's just something that stayed a little longer, but people were a little bit more hesitant to pick up the phone. And you don't know if you're going to be, found with hostility on the other side or what's going on. So I've been hearing more and more this advice to, try to remember that there's a human on the other side, give in a call, try to see what's going on, and try to go beyond what those emails say. So I think that those are definitely two things that end up coming up more and more throughout the episodes of the podcast.
And are there any particular interviews that stand out to you that maybe something that you're interested in or that you can share with us?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of like very nice things about different interviews I've done, but some people's story are just particularly fascinating, right? So I did talk with a law firm partner called Brian Potts. He's a little bit of a LinkedIn celebrity, but his story is very interesting one. He applied to 100 law firms getting out of law school, and he got rejected, built his practice elsewhere, and at some point in his career, he came back to one of those firms that rejected him. So then he got the opportunity to share a few insights with people saying never give up on your dreams. Basically, put up his rejection letter by his title of being a partner at the firm, and that definitely was a very much an inspirational moment to a lot of people. So it shows just the importance of persevering if that's something you're really looking into doing. Um, I also got the opportunity to talk with Sandra Scheim, who had a very interesting career spanning from New York to um, Massachusetts and then coming back to Ontario to work at the government, and basically sharing a little bit of what this different area of practices look like. So she was a litigator, and then now she works with dispute resolution in unions and in labor disruption in Ontario. So it was interesting to see her insights talking about how the law degree is really a thinking degree, and it can help you to get into the most diverse kinds of situations. So those are just, I think, two to mention, but there's definitely a lot of very interesting stories over the years.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely fascinating, right? Because I think one of the things that again from going to school in Ontario and we see certain like no, the big sort of Bay Street in Ontario law firms, and when you come in, those are the names on the doors and things like that, and people think, well, that's one path to law, right? But I mean, beyond obviously our borders. There's many different ways to use a law degree. There's many different areas of practice, and would you be able to sort of look into some of those people you've interviewed and say, I didn't really realize that you could do that in law, or maybe different ways in which the law, the practice of law happens in different countries. Is there anything like um, that differs in the structure of maybe how things are in Brazil that really stood out to you? Now, you mentioned, for example, the small claims court, and it's not widely utilized in many other countries. But anything that you think is kind of unique that from a particular story from a particular person practicing in a particular country that it would benefit from, whether it's in Ontario now or in Brazil.
Yeah, so another very interesting difference is how a few countries really make it very comfort, like put different lawyers in different boxes, right? So you're a solicitor or you're a barrister, but maybe not necessarily you're two at the same time. At some jurisdictions, you have to go through specific licensing procedures to become one or the other. So that's definitely something that is interesting to see. And when speaking about, in general, what things that are interesting to see, or maybe things that I hadn't thought much about. I feel like my interviews with in-house counsel are always the most interesting ones and personal learning for me, because a lot of in-house counsel do a lot of things that I could not imagine a legal role doing. In the sense that they, what kind of workload that they manage, what kind of situation they find themselves in. So it's been interesting to see those different roles, especially in the in-house scenario, not only in Canada but in different areas of the world. Mentioning a few things, for example, there's somebody that I talked with that works with mining, and basically the government took away their permits because they were claiming that there's a specific kind of bat that was being extinguished because of the mining in that region. And then basically this lawyer has to find all of these biology professionals and this bat professional that works halfway across the country to do a visit and do an evaluation and then be an expert witness. So there's all this very interesting both breadth and width of work that can happen in those departments. So it's been interesting for me to see really the immensitude of work, and also to see how lawyers can just do just about everything.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really fascinating because like I said, there's no one singular path to being a lawyer. And maybe on that point, actually, did you kind of learn about, you were mentioning bar exams, some have no bar exams, some have oral bar exams. What are some of the different requirements, in country to country? I don't know if it's come up regularly to become a lawyer, right? Like, as you said, you initially started with, well, how do you become a lawyer in Brazil? How do you become a lawyer in Azerbaijan? How do you become a lawyer in the United States? So, I mean, are there any things that stand out that are, again, different than you would expect? I know, as you mentioned, barrister and solicitors, and in some places you just go straight from a high school program, and you can go to law school. In other places, like in Ontario, you have a full degree before you can step foot, in most cases, in a law school. So, what are some of the different unique things you've found with education, and maybe even the bar exams and stuff, as you've touched on before?
That's right. So it's interesting because I did these interviews over the years. So I don't know if what I learned back in 2021 still applies, or if, if the specificity of what I interviewed on was, this is how my state or my province does it specifically. So I'll say these things generally speaking from what I remember, but I could be mistaken. And I already kind of apologize in advance if I'm speaking broadly about something that was supposed to be just very specific. But to speak about a few different things, right? So I've learned that in Bolivia, for example, you can graduate law school and you're a lawyer automatically. You basically register for it. There's no bar exam, there's no articling or trainship or anything like that. Whereas if you go to Chile, for example, you do have an oral bar exam. So that was very interesting to hear. But also in most of these countries outside of North America, uh, a law degree is your first degree outside of high school. So it's a bachelor's degree. And then in North America specifically, you have this difference, right, of having a JD degree. I've learned too that this used to be the case in Canada. It used to be a bachelor's. I'm not sure if you had to do something before that or not, but it, the kind of the market adjusted it to be a JD, right? So I think that most English speaking countries now offer some kind of a JD degree, and it usually has this name specifically to fit what the market expects of people having the program and all of that. North America expects you to have somewhat of a background in something else beforehand, and I've learned through my interviews and all of that sometimes that background makes a big difference. If you go into the medical field, health, engineering, usually that really gives you some advantage. If you want to go into areas like IP law afterwards, you're kind of expected to have that kind of a background. So it's just been interesting to see all the nuances. And sometimes even if you can get licensed, what does that mean for employment afterwards as well, right? So beyond that too, I'm pretty sure that Turkey is one of the countries that requires for you to be a citizen in order to become a lawyer. So you couldn't be an internationally trained lawyer who just goes there, takes exams or study. You'd also need citizenship. So there's very much different levels and interesting differences as to how you can practice in different countries. I've also come to find out that some countries and some bars have reciprocity agreements with different bars in the world as well. So I've learned that if you're licensed in Quebec, it's not very hard to become licensed in France and Paris. So there's also this interesting agreements that happen in that sense as well. And then because the EU lets you offer services and products, you basically become a lawyer who can act for many different matters in all of the European Union. So it's just been interesting to see all of that and how all of that plays out a big role in different aspects. Seeing that some lawyers choose to be licensed in their home jurisdiction, and then they choose to also take the New York bar, or to be licensed as a solicitor in the UK, because contracts are usually ruled by one of those laws throughout the world. So just yeah, definitely a lot of different things that I've been learning as I go through all of these interviews, and I see what people are doing, what the market expects, and um, how unusual or common that can be.
Yeah, I was just gonna follow that up by asking about the the ability to transfer jurisdictions and like yourself, right? You've become a Brazilian lawyer, and now you're finding yourself in Ontario and looking to become licensed here. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, right? So you came to Osgood a few years ago, and now you finished your GPLLM. And what did you kind of learn from the the interviews you did in terms of now yourself applying it to getting licensed or going through the process of getting licensed here in Ontario?
Yeah, so there's two aspects to it, right? There's the aspect of actually becoming a licensed lawyer, and then there's another aspect of it of actually having a job and a career and all of that. So usually, in some jurisdictions, one and the other are one thing and the same, but I believe that it's not the case for most of North America, right? So some jurisdictions like California make it somewhat straightforward for you to become a lawyer if you have a foreign degree, but it definitely doesn't mean that you can have working rights and then get a job and all of that if you're foreign trained. So definitely a lot of nuances and a lot of very things that depend on each scenario. It's the classic lawyer answer on it depends. um, but speaking here specifically on Ontario, I think there's a lot of things that you'd have to kind of learn ahead, right? So to make those informed decisions, and I've learned early on about the regulated recruit, for example. So for us who choose to do an LLM, we basically will be applying for summer and articling positions a whole year before you can actually start the job. So basically, you're going to start before you even have grades from your LLM, and then you're going to do the whole program. And after the program is done, you start your working experience. So it's just very interesting. And then basically, if you lose that timeline and you just apply on the following year, you have to basically find some other job to doing this whole year. You have to wait for articling to start. And that's a specific mostly to the regulated recruit. In other circumstances, I feel like you can find some more flexibility on how that's delivered. But it's just been interesting to see how, kind of knowing those timelines and knowing these specific things do play a really, really, really big role, because it can be the difference of, being fully licensed or not, specifically in this jurisdiction where articling with a firm is one of the prerequisites, right? Of course, you can go into other pathways, but this is one of them, and this is one of the very feasible possibilities where you're also being uh, financially remunerated as you are going through your licensing.
So with that in mind, I mean, you come here, you're doing your GPLM, and lo and behold, a topic familiar to you, a podcast. You go out and do 75 more interviews with U of T graduates. So maybe you could tell me a little bit about how that came together and some of the highlights of that, and we'll kind of dissect that a little bit in a follow-up.
Yeah, thank you for asking, John Paul. So one of the very interesting projects that I got the chance to be a part of during my LLM experience was the 75 Lawyers program, or more specifically, 75 years, 75 lawyers. So the University of Toronto Faculty of Law in this last year was turning 75 years, and as soon as I joined the faculty as a student, I learned about that. I got the chance to attend a few of the programming, and I got to see all of those alumni on stage telling people jokes, just being really funny up there, doing a lot of follies. And I really felt like I wanted to connect with those alumni. I wanted to understand this community a little better. And I felt that the law school was a nice place to do that. So I gave some thought, and I was thinking, how can I go about and engage with those alumni, right? We have this common connection of being both in the law school, but uh, I also definitely feel that everywhere I go, I want to leave something behind. I want to leave somewhat of a legacy. I want to, maybe make a difference. And sometimes that's very abstract, and sometimes I can get some clever ideas and know how to materialize that. So I've been active on LinkedIn for years now, and I saw a lot of US peers that were doing their JD programs, and it's somewhat of a common thing to hear that people decide to meet with 100 lawyers throughout their 3 years of law school. So they do that, they share those insights on LinkedIn, and basically that gives them a big network in the area they want to work at. It also gives you content to be sharing on LinkedIn, so it helps you to connect with other people. So it's just really a good idea and a good basis to start off your practice, and kind of try to put two and two together. And I'm like, you know what, I have to interview 75 lawyers throughout my GPLLM. So it was definitely an ambitious goal. I basically had to interview, two people a week minimum. And then of course you can't really schedule and find people who can in the days you want them to. So sometimes you interview nobody for a couple of weeks, and then you have to catch up and interview six at a week. So it was just very, very interesting to see that, playing out. But I got the chance to talk with all of those alumni, and it was just very, very interesting to see what the community had to say. And I got the chance to interview a few of the notable alumni as well. So I got the chance to talk to two former Supreme Court justices, both Justice Moldaver and Justice Abella, were very gracious to accept my invitation to be part of this project. I also got the opportunity to talk with Ambassador Bob Ray. So there's quite a few of the names that you might have heard of before that were featured in the booklet. And then basically got all of these interviews, asked each of them to um, basically help me to summarize all of that advice that they gave me into a quote. And then we put all of those quotes together into a booklet that was now published in the alumni magazine of the university. So it's now part of this, so to say, legacy that I've left at the university. Anybody can go back now and take a look and see, what do they say? What do they think that people should be doing? I Those quotes specifically come from the question, what would you tell, a young lawyer who's just graduating out of law school? What would you tell young professionals graduating in the next 75 years? What would you tell them? So basically, that's the inspiration for those quotes. So there's a lot of very practical advice that can really help anyone looking into building a legal career, not only in Ontario, but all throughout the world. I got the chance to speak with alumni who were in town, but also got the chance to speak with alumni who are now working in Switzerland, Singapore, and really in all four corners of the globe.
Yeah, so I guess kind of the same question we were looking at before, but I mean it's almost similar numbers, right? 79, I think, and 75. So does the answer to my question before about, now you're focused purely on U of T alumni. I mean, Jen, I know you mentioned Switzerland and other places, but generally, practicing or at least studying in Ontario, does it change in terms of what are the paths that they went on to? Or even if you look at the collection of all those quotes, are they giving very different advice? Are they giving very similar advice? Um, what can you kind of say if you're now summarizing the summaries of those 75?
Hmm. So I would say that definitely there's a lot of an overlap of what people will tell me during the podcast and what people told me during the 75 interviews. It was definitely a lot of the things were common topics for sure, but there was a lot of interesting things. People were talking a lot about the reputation and about how you should protect your reputation, should make sure that you're trusted, and how much that's the big role of a lawyer. And I thought that was so interesting because of all things you can tell a young lawyer, that's one that they really thought that played a big role. They also talked a lot about having initiative and making a name for yourself as someone who has initiative, and how oftentimes these people who are older lawyers now, they really noticed that each class that came in of students, each class that came in of young associates, really had those people that made their names as people who had initiative, and they wanted to work with those people. It was interesting too because another topic that came up was about your sense of humor, being yourself, and you know um, while professionalism is so important in most work environments, there is a need for people to be human and be vulnerable and be able to share, their struggles and their concerns. So they also talked about the importance of being human. You're going to probably spend 10 hours a day with those people for a long time, so you want to make sure that those people are people that you can talk to about all different areas. And of course, you hit off with some people more than others, but it was another interesting topic that kind of came up over and over again. um, and then other topics would come to these interviews, as well as to make sure that you speak with confidence from early on, or that there was a few people who came up with the fake it till you make it quote, but other people said it's not just about that, it's a lot about you have to do something at least 10 times to be good at it, or to understand what's going on. So also, while you're kind of building that skill, make sure that you know maybe tell people, hey, this is my first time doing this, can you just look it over again? And there was a very interesting basis to cover on that, on like different environments, different firms, different cultures would accept that better than others. But overall, that seemed to be a repeat in a lot of the conversations I had.
Yeah, that's great there, and I think maybe again the same sort of thing in terms of any particular words or an interview that really stand out to you that really resonated with you over those 75.
Yeah, so all of them had really good insights, right? That motivated the group, that motivated the booklet. But definitely the big names I mentioned to you, like former Supreme Court Justice Mo Daver. His remarks were really really interesting. He talked about honesty, integrity, about your word being your bond, and standing up for what you believe, even when it's not convenient. So definitely, it was a powerful interview, powerful reminders of not only the kind of professional you want to be, but the kind of person you want to be. And at the end of your career, when you look back at what happened and what you accomplished, you don't want to be, full of regrets. So that was definitely something that um, was a highlight, personally speaking, seeing that and hearing from somebody who felt that very personally and was able to put that into words. So I understand that was one of the big highlights for me.
Now, Claudia, when you look at your legal education and you look at that side by side with these podcasts that you've done, can you kind of compare what you've learned? I mean, first, within, I mean, all the different places you've studied, but in terms of sort of the education classroom setting, as you said, is pretty common, versus what you've learned from 150 plus interviews of whether it's 75 U of T graduates or 80 people from around the world. Like what are the differences and maybe the similarities in the education that's brought you?
Absolutely. So I do believe that these interviews, talking to people, the networking, definitely bridged somewhat of a gap, right? So I learned a lot about case law, about how to think a problem through to some extent, how to have that think like a lawyer mindset. But definitely, other things like how to survive your first client call, or how to handle this specific situation or that other specific situation. Uh, are not things that you can find in your law school courses, right? So definitely, these outside resources come really to bridge that gap, be it books, be it conversations with classmates, be it podcasts, and so forth. So definitely, I do believe that having this side project helped a lot. And then to be exact on like what kinds of things did you learn, right? um, I definitely, with some more time, could be thinking about very specific examples. But I think that some of those are the ins and outs of a career, and how do you navigate being uh, in different situations in your career. How do you navigate transitioning from being at work at a firm and going into in-house, and what kind of skills you have to highlight in those settings. And I don't I'm not like blaming schools in any way, but just about anywhere in the world, the opinion is pretty much the same, that education is one step and then practice is totally different. So we don't get a lot of preparation for practice anywhere in the world, as far as I know, as far as I've talked with people and learned. Uh, so it's definitely something that came up in these conversations too, right? A lot of my colleagues have had experiences in their home jurisdictions as well, ended up coming to Canada later on. And it's interesting to see that you just learn how lawyers think, really, when you talk to them. You don't learn that in school, in your coursework.
Yeah, so it's kind of like demystifying, the various aspects of the legal profession because, again, you may learn contract law, but you don't know what it's like to draft a contract or to litigate, breaches of contract and things like that, for example. Now, Claudia,
Exactly.
what's next for you now? I think you just said you finished the LLM. So what is your plan going forward? And I suppose obviously some more podcasts or episodes of the podcast on tap as well.
Yeah, so for sure, until the end of the summer, there's going to be more podcasts. I don't know what's going to happen exactly after the summer is over, just because of how I like to run this project. It is a project that I do mostly for fun and that I learn a lot with, but that I also try to keep a healthy balance. And I definitely want to make sure that I still enjoy doing it. So usually come up with a few seasons a year. And in the sense of what's next, so currently I'm working as a 2L summer law student, so getting the chance to be exposed to a lot of different cases, a lot of different assignments in research and so forth. And then very excited to start articling and have a little bit more of an extra layer of responsibility coming up. And then the bar exam and all that is necessary to be fully licensed. But that's what I'm looking at right now, kind of taking one step at a time, and just enjoying each phase as they come.
Now, Claudia, I mean, for anyone else, I know you've mentioned again, there's projects and you were inspired by these 100 lawyers projects, from before you get your JD in the US and stuff like that. But I mean, any advice for students that are listening, who, again, as you said, maybe they're learning a lot of the theoretical, but it may not necessarily, do a 150 interviews, but how to kind of get that connection, right? How did you sort of reach out to whether it's former Supreme Court Justice Moldaver or any of these different lawyers from around the world? Like, is it as simple as sliding into their DMs, as the kids say on LinkedIn, and say, "Hey, I'm doing this podcast." I mean, I think that's pretty much what I did with you, actually. But is it any different? Is it that simple? I mean, can you share for my students, like, if they want to just talk to one lawyer, how easy it is to do?
Yeah, so I would put it two ways, right? So I would say that most people who are willing to talk, they will get back to you within a couple of weeks on LinkedIn. And if they're not willing to talk or they don't have the time right now, yeah, you just might be ghosted a little bit, but that's just part of the experience. So definitely go ahead, reach out. The cold outreach is the way to go, I believe. But really, this profession has a good reputation for giving back and for talking to people. So I would recommend definitely looking to those early year associates who are just a few steps ahead of you. I think that's something very important to keep in mind of. And then kind of reach out, explain your connection. Maybe if you're studying at the same university as they are, but definitely be sincere about your expectations. Say that you're trying to learn about their area of practice, or whatever it is that you're trying to learn and accomplish with those. Have that clear in mind ahead of the conversation and this message, and you'll have a good experience. That's my experience, and that's what I've seen happening in the lives of those colleagues that I have in the program that also tried different approaches to it. Don't overthink it. I think that's a good point. Don't overthink it. Don't keep thinking, "Ah, what's the perfect subject line for the email?" Or what if they think that I'm not smart? If you keep thinking about that, it's just you're gonna get little done, right? So um, feeling not smart or uh, you know it's really a privilege of those that get stuff done. So if you're concerned, maybe that's a good thing that you care still, but definitely don't let that stop you. uh, People who are doing things are the ones that get ahead, and I would definitely recommend you to just get started.
Perfect. Now, Claudia, do you have any final words of wisdom for any of my students? I know you just shared some there, but anything else that you wish to add? And perhaps you can end as well by sharing where people can reach out to find your respective podcasts and the booklet and everything there with U of T.
I would say explore different areas, talk to people who work in different areas, ask about their lifestyle, ask about what the area of law looks like. That will help you to get a lot of clarity and see if you find people that you'd want to spend your days with. This is a profession that requires a lot of hours, usually at work. It requires hard work. So you might as well choose a place where you will be welcome, where you'll be able to be yourself, and where you'll be able to enjoy the company of your colleagues. So those are just a few things to keep in mind. And how you go finding out about that and getting some clarity is really by reaching out to people, find them on LinkedIn or on their firm's websites, send them emails, ask to set up coffee chats. As I mentioned, this profession is and has a good reputation for giving back and nurturing and mentoring younger generations, and I do believe that that's very much the case, and it will continue to be. So reach out, don't be shy, and have fun along the way. Don't overthink it.
Claudia, how can we get information about your respective podcasts?
Absolutely. So if you find me on LinkedIn, Claudio Klaus, that's the easiest way because I'll have it right there on my feature pages. But you also can, look up on Google 75 years, 75 stories, and you'll find the page for the University of Toronto Faculty of Law Nexus magazine, and that's where the booklet is published. And then you can also find my podcast, which is named Studying Law Around the World, and that's available on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or really wherever you listen to your podcasts. It should be there. If you have a very specific platform where you listen to your podcast and it's not there yet, send me a message and I'll make sure it's there within the day.
Perfect. So thank you so much for taking the time here and talking to me. Congratulations on all you're doing with the respective podcasts, and all the best on your, I guess, as you transition to articling in a few weeks, and then getting ready to write the barrister and solicitor exams, I think probably in the next year. All the
Thank
best,
you so
Claudio.
much.
Thanks
I
again.
really
Take care.
appreciate the time. Thank you all for tuning in.